National Bison Association has been lobbying for the removal of tariffs on American bison meat exports into the European Union for 15 years. Now the organization can breathe a sigh of relief after the White House announced a recent trade deal with the EU, which includes preferential access for the American protein. As part of the trade deal, the EU plans to eliminate tariffs on all U.S. industrial goods, which includes bison meat. The deal would also provide preferential market access for a variety of U.S. seafood and agricultural goods, including the buffalo meat. The Bison Association requested tax-free arrangements for bison meat exports into the EU to meet European consumer demand. The executive director of the association says there is no bison production outside of the U.S. and Canada.
Currently, the Canadian government has a 0% trade deal for their bison exports to the European Union and has for probably 10 years at least now, if not longer. So we've always been at a competitive disadvantage in that regard.
With the deal, Matheson says he thinks it will allow domestic marketers to pursue and grow European markets. He adds there were several factors that may have led to the federal government agreeing to a deal, which led to the 20% tariff removed from American bison exports into the EU.
Us not posing any competition to European farmers and ranchers, the way this animal is raised, and the fact that we can't federally prohibited from giving bison any growth hormones or supplements, this all plays into, again, what the consumers over there demand.
Matheson says they're also trying to tap into the United Kingdom market and remove similar tariff burdens that are preventing them from importing